So hot in the heels of us talking about every single team in the top 5 of our own personal rankings. Haha. Um, we're going to talk about the top 4 teams and their drivers. And today we're going to talk about McLaren because
Oof.
McLaren are our favourites to win a Constructors' Championship. 2
Gee.
on the bounce, we think. And the bookies seem to agree with us that Lando Norris is odds on favourite to win the 2025 Drivers' World Championship. The 2025 Drivers' World Championship. Ammar, there are 2 drivers at McLaren. One named Lando Norris, one named Oscar Piastri. Who's going to win?
Well, if you started by saying that Lando is the odds-on favorite to win the championship, then this discussion is pretty much over, no? Like, I mean, I don't know. Is there like a tier above that? Like, I don't know. Maybe there's a what do you call it? You win the battle, you lose the war kind of thing. There's I don't know. That
Well, I
means
mean,
no
like, I'm
trophy winner.
hoping, I'm hoping that you have an insight above and beyond what Bet365 tells us. Surely you have that
Perfect.
insight.
We surely do have that insight. But look, this time last year when we did our first ever teammate wars on McLaren, we had predicted collectively that Piastri would come out on top because we thought that
I
he
was
had.
tentative. I
Oh
was
yes,
tentative.
yeah, yeah. And if you guys haven't, man, go back and watch that video. Thank God Shez's life was not on the line there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But you're right. I mean, look, last year we thought that Piastri presented potential on the back of his Qatar sprint win the year before, and so we thought that he certainly had the goods to go up against Lando, and that didn't quite happen, did it? Right? I mean, he did manage to. So I did some stats work for you, Shez. You'll be really proud of me. So I went back and looked at the 46 Grand Prix that both Lando and Oscar participated in, right? And so there's no better way to kind of compare what the two of them have done, right? But I do want to throw out some stats at you here because you seem to love these. Any guesses on what the podium differential is between Lando and Oscar?
Tell me.
Lando had twice as many podiums as Oscar. Oscar had 10 podiums. Lando had 20, right? And this is, by the way, in 46 Grand Prix that they've been together, right? On average, Lando scored more points than Oscar. That shouldn't come as a surprise because Lando finished second in the championship. Lando was competing with Max for championship, right, last year, and you make what you will out of his pursuit there. And look, losing to Verstappen isn't the worst thing in the world, right? Because we have identified Verstappen as being really one of one and probably on the Mount Rushmore, if not right outside looking in, right? But Shez, here's the more damning thing, and I've heard from a lot of Oscar fans, some that you and I both know, that Oscar has supposedly been held back by McLaren because they really wanted to try to push Lando to win and last year and try to get points and blah 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 blah. And I know there's that one switcheroo in a sprint race. I get it. I get it. But guess what? Do you know how many pole positions Oscar has compared to Lando? Yes, there you go. It's a big fat zero. So my argument to all the Piastri stan is that no one has stopped Oscar from getting the car on pole. Like no one has ever said, "Hey, don't do that. Don't do that." Now, it has not happened in this century at all, right? Or in the 46 races that they've been together, which is basically 2 seasons and plus. Um, yeah, why not? So I have a hard time seeing Oscar being able to do this. We'll talk about the wins in a little bit, but just on the stats that I've given you alone, I find it hard to believe that Oscar would beat Lando.
Okay, so is that your answer? That was a really long-winded
Yes.
way of saying you think Lando Norris is going to come
Well,
out on top. Yes?
I mean, yeah, we have to have a discussion, no?
Yeah, I mean, the stats don't really help Oscar on this one, do they? Out qualified 20 times to 4 last year in relevant qualifying sessions, and languishing behind him in the championship as well, where Lando was out there gunning for a title, which okay, pertinent point. He didn't win, did he? And why didn't he win that title, Omar? Like, was it all just him, or did
Because
the
Max
team
is
have,
Max.
or did the team themselves have some part
Sure.
to play in that?
Sure, but I mean, look at who he was going up against. I mean, yeah, Lewis didn't win against Max, and Lewis was a seven-time champion then. So, again, it's not the
Shouldn't
worst thing.
McLaren have put all their eggs in the Lando Norris basket?
They should have. Why not?
Why didn't they?
Because that's McLaren.
But what
That's
about
McLaren
McLaren?
for you. I mean, they
So
came out
is
with these silly papaya rules. I
okay.
mean,
So do you think that if Alonso had been there, if Fernando Alonso had been in that seat and was out qualifying his teammate the way that Lando Norris was, that McLaren would be sitting there backing each horse equally when one of them is absolutely
yes,
up for the
because
title?
Fernando would have been vocal about it. He would have created a lot of drama. I mean, what we're doing here is, are you doing a personality test?
I am,
Because
because
if
there's
that's the case,
something
then that's
about
a different thing.
because yeah, but all of this is
But
part of
neither
the
driver
all of this
seems
is part of
equipped
the
to play
argument.
mind games, Shez. Like
Really,
you're telling me that Oscar would be running around being a Fernando Alonso, and he would not do that.
I do think
He
that.
would totally not do that.
I
He
do
he can
think that.
barely say anything
I
ever
don't.
interesting ever, other than of course his racing is brilliant. But you can't tell me he's going to go. I mean, we would listen to Alonso, that season if nothing else, because he would be creating drama of like the you can't believe it.
Okay,
You just
so
can't.
this is the crux of my argument here, right?
Okay.
That McLaren had the opportunity to back Lando Norris last season. And
Yeah.
in fact, Zach Brown, in an interview with the Intercooler very recently, said, "Look, our mistake in 2024 was not being clear about our racing rules, our papaya rules. But who the heck rules? Who rules at McLaren? Because it ain't Lando Norris." The point he made was Monza was the example. We should have been clear that they're free to race once they've got past the first lap. But they didn't say that. They just said you're free to race. And Oscar took the initiative and went round the outside of him at turn 4. Brilliant move. Absolutely brilliant freaking move. But it should never have really happened. But why is it that McLaren allowed that to happen? And that is where I think Oscar can gain some strength. He may not be as fast as Lando, but he does learn. That was the hallmark of his junior career. Whenever he found a shortcoming, he fixed it. Pace is something that he needs. How do we know that over the winter that's not what he's gone away and worked on? He said before, he said himself, that's what I need to work on. If he can get close enough, then I think under racing conditions, not qualifying conditions, but racing conditions when the points are handed out, Oscar Piastri definitely has the edge. Because all I've seen from Lando is that, number one, he falters when there is any form of a challenge against him, and did so throughout 2024, even if he got a bit better towards the end. And second, his team didn't believe in him either. That's why they were happy to not give out clear racing rules that allowed Lando to go and win a championship. And if that happens again, Oscar is close enough in racing conditions to do the business
Yeah.
against him.
Okay. So a couple of things there. One, if you believe that Oscar went off in the off season and came back with some improvements, but Lando didn't, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, yeah, sure. Oscar would have come back and said, "Look, I need to fix this, and that." So could Lando, and he has now. And by the way, what Lando was experiencing in terms of his challenge, he was going up against one of the goats, and you have to believe that going up against one of the goats would give you the best chance to improve in ways that you wouldn't have if you are the second guy catching up to Lando. So there's a big difference between the two. So just like you would believe that Oscar could come back and come back with some improvements, although you're caveating that with saying that he wouldn't qualify well on Saturdays, which I don't understand. How does that put him in a better position? Sure, fair enough. That's fine. So can Lando. Lando now knows what he needs to do with Max. He has a full season ahead of him. They now have a dominant car that's clearly head and shoulders above Red Bull. We can debate what the pecking order is, but Lando certainly has that, and he has shown to be dominant. Now, you may argue that the wheel-to-wheel racing component is still TBD, but when Lando was given a car that he could lead, and put it on pole on Saturday, he can go out and win, a la Singapore, a
Yeah,
la
yeah.
Abu Dhabi. He
I'll,
can do that.
okay, I'll take
And
that.
let me just tell you this
Oh,
before
there's
you
more.
go.
Sorry, there's
You
more.
talked about McLaren not establishing clear rules. That is not a reflection of their confidence in one driver over the other. That's a reflection of the fact that they were rookies. They were amateurs last year in getting to this fight. They did not expect to be in the championship fight and therefore had not prepared. Now, sure, we can come back and say, look, it's a good thing you won the championship. You almost didn't, right? Because Ferrari only finished a few points behind them. They could have very well lost that. But in reality, they were ahead of schedule, so they had not prepared for these things. I would like to believe that given Zach Brown's intelligence, everything else that McLaren has, they will come back and be better this year.
Okay, what was there to prepare? It's very simple to say you guys are racing or you guys are not racing. It's not a case of, oh, you can have a go into the first corner and then you can race. It's a simple case of
But
Lando
they didn't
is our
clarify
shot.
it.
Exactly.
It's them that haven't clarified
Yeah,
it. It's
sure.
not a
But
driver's fault.
why did they
Because
not have?
they were
Why did
not
they?
capable enough of thinking that way. That's
Okay.
why. It's not because they favored Oscar over Lando
I'm
or
not
didn't
saying
favor
they
either
did.
driver.
I'm not saying they did favor Oscar, but they didn't favor Lando. That was the problem. They didn't favor the driver that was
Because
up
they
for the title because they didn't
because
trust him.
it's not because they didn't
They
trust him, Chess.
ultimately didn't
It's
trust
just
him. And in fact,
okay, but then what were they
there
gonna
are
do?
there
They
are
were gonna put
insiders.
Piastri, who was like fourth, fifth in the ranking, to kind of
Ammar,
go after him.
there are insiders in McLaren last season that said we don't believe that Lando is going to be able to do this. That's why
Okay, then
that's
why did
why
he
they
then
were
don't keep him?
that's why they hedged their bets. And I would take your argument about going up against the GOAT, and I would give you this. Yes, McLaren may have a more dominant car this season. There's no guarantee of that, but they may have a more dominant car. Fine. But if Oscar is closer to Lando in terms of outright pace, then that puts him in the same position that Max Verstappen was last
Oh,
year.
no, you're telling me Piastri is
I'm not
Max
saying no.
Verstappen?
No. Okay. So Ammar, let's get this really straight. What I did not say is that Oscar Piastri is better than Max Verstappen. What I did say is that it puts Oscar in the same position that Max found himself in last season, up against a quicker car, but having the ability to be better in race conditions. That's what I'm saying. If you take that, if Oscar is close enough, Lando keeps making the mistakes he made last season, Oscar will do to him what Max did to him in 2024. And you cannot use the car differential because they're in the same car.
I'm not using the car differential, Chess, but you put two ifs in there, and then you know what Max says about ifs and buts,
What
right?
are the two
So
ifs?
if Lando makes these mistakes and if Oscar is improved, can be the exact opposite too. Piastri could be making mistakes and Lando could be improved. You don't know that. So what we're going off of is what we've
Okay, well,
seen.
fine. In which
When
case,
Lando's given,
fine. In which case, if we're going to take that, let's take the ifs out of it because all we've got is precedent from previous
sure.
seasons, right? So if we're going to take that precedence, then and we have a McLaren that is dominant, then you'd still expect, even if Oscar is slower than Lando, that he would still qualify close to him, which you'd expect would be in the top one or two, right? And Lando, being Lando, would still make the same mistakes that he was making last season, even off the line. Why are we not? If we're using past as prologue, you
no,
can't.
we're not.
Oh,
We're not because
okay, so you're allowed to use
here's why.
ifs,
Yes,
but
we
I'm
are
not.
using past, but I disagree with your interpretation of it.
Okay.
Again, I just told you that Piastri qualified a record 0 times on pole. And I haven't looked at his average qualifying
Still
position, but
out-qualified
outside
Lando
of
4 times, though. It's not like he hasn't
okay,
out-qualified
fair
him.
enough. Yes, sure. I mean, there's a one disaster. I get it. I get it. Statistics can be stuffed that way too, right? I mean, even Ferrari had their issues, and I don't disagree with the fact that we can arrive at Melbourne and there might be two super competitive drivers in both Lando and Piastri, but I'm looking at the body of work here. And let me just tell you this because it bears
So am
bringing up.
I.
Piastri's two wins are just as crappy. Let's be honest with you. They're the most unremarkable wins that somebody can have. Because Hungary, he had to be given that victory. Let's
Incorrect.
just call it for what it is.
Absolutely incorrect.
Yes. No, hang on. Let me finish. Let me finish.
Absolutely incorrect.
I mean, listen, we heard the only remarkable thing from that race was Lando's engineer pleading to him, please give him
If
the place
Lando
back.
had
The
won
fire
that
rules. You're
race,
gonna need Oscar. Blah
Ammar,
blah blah.
Ammar,
Okay. And if Lando was smarter, which here I'll give you criticism for him. If Lando was smarter, if I were him, I would have given the position right away, and then he would have, as we know, towards the end of the race, he was the quicker guy. He would have overtaken Oscar anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. And then let's not forget the Baku thing. Oh, okay, he pulled
Mini
off one cheeky move.
DRS.
One
Mini
cheeky
freaking
move, and it was
DRS.
proven time and time again that the mini DRS was the difference there.
Sure.
And guess what? You don't even have to believe any of that. McLaren themselves retired that wing because they knew that was illegal. That was a cheeky move. Fair enough. A win is a win is a win. I'll give you that. But if you're going to tell me that Oscar pulled off these cheeky moves and he's great at that, fine, fair enough. He's done that. He did that to Lando in Monza, and look what happened to them as a team. You're right. McLaren should have been more clear, but that is a reflection on their inability to see through what the possibilities are, as opposed to the drivers themselves.
Okay. You've just entered another little argument into that. But let's just talk about that mini DRS. You know, it wasn't just Baku that they had that mini DRS. They had it at Spa. Yeah. What did Lando do with it? Nothing. What did Lando do with it in Monza? Nothing.
What did
Oscar do with it in Baku? Won the race.
No, so, you can't say he won the race. Look, you can't look at it that way, because here's why. I am not talking about what they did at another track. We know for a fact that the mini DRS helped him hold off Leclerc, who had DRS behind him. So why
was Lando not able to use it to his advantage?
But that's not even a debate.
It is a debate. I'm having it with you now. Lando did not use the mini. I am having that with you now because Lando did not use the mini DRS to his advantage at either Monza or Spa.
He didn't.
And at Monza,
that was not his race.
He could have won that race.
That was not his race. What do you mean? What does that have anything to do with it? He didn't use it. What I'm arguing here is that in that particular race, that wing help. If there's no mini DRS, you know that Oscar is getting overtaken.
Ammar,
you know that too.
Ammar, that is my argument. There is no guarantee that Oscar would have got past that would have got past by Leclerc. In fact, he got past Leclerc without mini DRS. He got past him with normal DRS, as he should. Great move, and kept him behind.
Because he was behind. Of course, there would be normal DRS.
Was Lando able to make any gains on Max Verstappen when he had DRS in Spa?
He was not.
No,
he was not. We're talking about Max Verstappen here. We're not talking about.
No, we're not talking about Charles Leclerc. You're right. Max is much better than Charles Leclerc. But we're also not talking about. We're not giving him any benefit for the fact that he had mini DRS in Monza, didn't use it. So you can continue to go on about Monza.
Didn't use it doesn't mean anything, Shez. Didn't use it doesn't mean anything. Look,
you are saying that Oscar is.
I'm not saying that.
You are saying that Oscar won Baku because he used mini DRS. Well, I am saying that element was on the car for more races than Baku.
Sure.
And when Lando had the advantage, he didn't get a win out of it.
No, but did Oscar win Monza either after doing the overtake? In fact, he gave up his first place.
Did he win Baku?
His own race, he couldn't do anything that resembles tire management 101. I mean, come on, what are you talking about here? Lando didn't use it, but neither did Oscar.
So as I say, my argument here is that if they qualify close to each other, and if we're taking all ifs out of it,
you're being slightly misleading. Now, you know that Monza as a track is very different than Baku, right? So Ferrari would have had a different car with a greater straight line speed, a new wing there, which they didn't necessarily have the same configuration in Baku. So we're talking about apples and oranges in terms of being able to use the mini DRS.
You are talking about an entire win based solely on one aerodynamic device, which was not there solely in Baku, and not solely 90%. There to give an advantage only in Baku. It was there to give an advantage
was the difference
at Spa and at Monza.
Yes, there are different ways.
So if you're telling, look, I'm using this as a reason to basically tell you that Baku was not a win solely because he had mini DRS.
90%.
Nah, not even slightly 90%. Yes, it helped a little bit, but I'm not. But you're not going to take away. You're not going to take away the.
Charles was 30 laps chasing him back and forth.
DRS. So perhaps Charles Leclerc should have driven a bit better off that final
DRS too. I mean, but it's negated by the mini DRS too.
Really.
That gave
I think you're making an excuse for your favorite.
Fair enough.
Leclerc should have just had a better exit off the final corner, and he would have got past. And maybe he should have got past.
I mean, would have gone into the wall too. He had nothing to lose, so he almost then it would have been that too.
Well,
so I mean,
maybe he should have tried harder at the 5 attempts when he actually did get alongside Oscar. Maybe he should have.
Maybe.
But let's get rid of the ifs, right? We're not using past as if we are using past as prologue because that's all we have, then Lando makes a huge amount of mistakes. Oscar doesn't qualify quite as high, but if they have a dominant car, he will be right up there with him. And if he outraces him,
I don't believe that Oscar will qualify better than Lando.
I'm not saying that he will.
I'm not even sure he will qualify. He has shown precious little proof of it. So
really,
I'm not saying he's going to be in the first row either.
Who qualified second in Hungary?
Lando. Was it Oscar? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Monza too.
Exactly.
And Monza too.
So
Fair enough.
It's not
but
like when the car...
out of 24 races, you're going to give me those two?
So
where did he qualify in Abu Dhabi?
So when he was...
Okay, but you can't just give me
third. two. So it's not like he was a million miles away.
Okay,
when Oscar does qualify in a car that is ahead of all of its rivals, then actually you'd expect him to be pretty close to Lando.
Yes, but I would also expect in the same way that Lando would make fewer mistakes he would have come back and learned something. Why would I, if I'm going to say that Oscar is going to qualify better, I'm also going to give, I can't just sit up here and say, oh, well, Lando's going to keep making mistakes. No, I have to believe that he won't unless he shows us otherwise. So maybe first 5 races will tell us.
I'm also going to say that Oscar is going to qualify better. And if he
qualifies
qualifies
better, status quo, no?
No, because he's already got an ingrained better race.
Okay, so you just don't want to give Lando any credit for being better. Like your expectation is that Lando will keep making mistakes, but that somehow miraculously Oscar is going to qualify better because I don't know. He went and changed his beverage lineup for the off-season.
I don't think that Oscar even has to qualify better than Lando. He just needs to qualify a little bit closer to give him the opportunity to capitalize on Lando's mistakes.
I don't see Lando giving up places like he did last year. I think that one or two things will happen.
Why not?
They are going to crash more often, and then McLaren are going to have to figure out a way to kind of establish some ground rules, which I would love, by the way. Yeah, that would be fine. That would be fine. I mean, look, the Ferrari drivers are going to be right behind, so cool. I'll take that. He's not going to allow Oscar to do that again. I do not believe that.
Based on what?
Based on the fact that you go and you improve when you have a
that's
championship.
Not a fact. That's an opinion. Like when you're saying based on the fact.
But what's your opinion about Oscar miraculously qualifying better? Like it's not going to happen.
I'm just saying that in a car that is dominant. I'm just saying in a car that is dominant, he has a better chance of being up close to Lando than he did last season when it was a bit more.
Fair enough. Better chances. All it's all about the devil is in the details, Shez. So yeah, sure. Better can be anything. Worse can be anything too. So it's fine. I do not believe that the guy who went toe-to-toe with Max and lost poorly, I might add, right? There's no questioning about that. Like Max had him, for lunch, dinner, supper, whatever it is you want to call it, brunch on Sundays, he had that. But he went up against Max Verstappen. He didn't necessarily lose against Oscar. He didn't necessarily even lose against Charles, might I say. So let's see what it looks like. And to be honest, to be fair,
but that's what we're doing. We're trying to predict what is going to happen.
But you asked me what is factual, and I just told you that factual is my gut, and I have a big gut, so it's very factual from that standpoint.
But Ammar, your gut is let's go and see what's going to happen. That's not.
Well, no. What I'm trying to say is I already told you what my prediction is, but I did tell you that we should reserve the right to come back 6-7 races into this and see how things actually work out. Because
very good.
None of us have a clue of what's going to happen. Really, we sat here last year thinking Max Verstappen was going to win it by the time we reached Suzuka or something So that didn't happen either. So. Of course, we know nothing.
All right, so okay, I think we're gonna have to draw this to an.
Are you picking Lando or Oscar? You never told us that.
Oscar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is a friendly wager. So for those of you that have stuck with us this long, we should try to figure out how to embarrass the guy who lost. No.
Sure. But if you don't want to embarrass anyone, if you just want to have your own opinion, please please subscribe, please leave us a comment. We'll read every single one and we'll reply to as many as we possibly can. Is it Lando? Is it Oscar? Let us know. We will see you guys in the next one.